Hi, David. Welcome to the Filmmakers podcast. How are you feeling?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Are you enjoying London?
I love London. I'm glad to be back. It's kind of my second home.
So The Beekeeper is a fantastic action film. I love a film with Jason Statham. I love your movies as well.
Oh, thank you.
It's a really enjoyable film. It's nice to see a fun action film. Obviously, your range of filmography kind of goes from very serious to slightly more on the wacky, exciting sort of exciting side. Can you talk about how this came to be, how this began?
Yeah, absolutely. I got this great script from Kurt Rimmer. I'm reading it. Has this mythology that's quite interesting, quite magnetic about the beekeepers, and just great character, but also this plot that just kind of goes crazy. And so as a filmmaker, it just made a lot of sense. And I've always wanted to challenge myself with making a film that reminded me of why I became a filmmaker. And that's movies like Die Hard and 48 Hours and Lethal Weapon, just those fun action movies. And I feel like a little bit of the fun is missing from cinema right now.
I think you're completely right. And I grew up on those films. Like I used to watch Die Hard, Lethal Weapon on repeat, like every sort of weekend. And they were just fun, good quality movies. You know, they had all the action, but they also had likable comedic characters as well. And they had that balance right. And I think that's really disappeared from cinema. So what's the process once you get the script in terms of deciding what you might want to do to it, what your terms are of engaging on a project?
It's really about, I have to ask myself, do I know how to make this? And how am I going to do this? And then it's a business. So can you do it for the money? And then the opportunity to work with Jason was just, something I couldn't turn down. So it was a little scary for me because it is outside of my normal work. And I learned that not only can I have fun in this space, but I can thrive in this space. So
what was he already part of the package when it arrived? Because it does feel like a Jason Statham film, but he's made some classic films over the years.
That's it. He was very baked in. It was already sort of crafted for him. And then my job as a filmmaker, as a director, was to establish a relationship with him and really understand his strengths and abilities, which are kind of immense. And this is a guy that does his own stunts. And normally, when you shoot action, you're working around a stunt double. And how do I get the actor's face in? And they do things now where they'll digitally place the actor's face onto the stunt double's body and things like that. So to not have to play any of those games and to have such an incredible, athletic, skilled stunt performer who also happens to be your star, that was a privilege.
Are there other things from a stunt perspective that are challenging in terms of maybe what you're allowed to do and what he's allowed to do, what he wants to do, what the studios don't want to do, that kind of thing?
Well, you can't hurt people for real. That's bad. You have to do everything safely, but it also has to be repeatable, because you have to do it again or get it just right. I think it was just really a matter of developing the choreography because there's so many stunt scenes. There's a lot of action in this. And in each action sequence, we wanted to be its own little story with, a beginning, a middle, and an end and have it play satisfying. So that is a lot easier to say than do. But having Jason on board and having Jeremy Marinas who did all the fight choreography, it wasn't easy, but it was possible.
So what were some of those early conversations with Jason about? Were they firstly sort of story and character? Like, how did that unfold? What did you maybe want from him? What did he want from you?
It was really, for me, everything is character. You always have to approach it from character. And I feel like Jason, this action icon, this action superstar, I felt like I wanted to get to know his heart a little bit and to put him into a little bit of an emotional world first, then have him go into action land. And so it was really, who is Adam Clay? Who is this character? What parallels in your own life, are similar to that? Who do you care about? Who are the vulnerable people in your life you want to protect? And when you come into a character like that, you can't go wrong.
Because he's a very likable character. I remember first seeing him in the taxi driver sort of films, The Transporter.
Yes.
And he just brings that hilarious British, understated, charisma, really. which really comes off in this film as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is a guy who is a giant in British cinema and has played so well in that space, who then transitions into Hollywood and absolutely conquered it. So it was just kind of fun to come to the UK and make a movie with Jason and really take advantage of all his strengths.
Yeah. What were some of the differences from shooting in the UK from shooting in America for you? Good or bad?
No disrespect to my American brothers, but there's something kind of magical about making a film here. There's a culture of cinema and a respect for the craft, and there's really these generational, collaborators and just even the grip department. Alex Frazier, his dad was my key grip on Fury, and to work with the same people again. And there's just such a respect for it and an artistry. As a director, it feels like you're making a movie.
So what were some of the stunt kind of preparations that you went through once you'd got the script, you're starting to think about the movie, you're talking with Jason? What were some of those? Because you talked about the story within the action sequences.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important thing that's often skimmed over in movies. Often you have the camera, you can't really figure out what's going on, you can't plot the geography.
Yeah.
And every action sequence does need to have a start, middle, and end the audience actually understands, for them to go along with the emotional arc of the story as well. And you've done, really nice, clean, visible action in this. So I'd be interested how you sort of started to approach those sequences.
With fear and trembling. It's wildly difficult. It's wildly difficult. So much planning goes into it. It starts with a little bit of tone. What kind of scene is this? Who are the bad guys? What style of fighting is this? And then you do choreography, and we do what's called stunt viz, which is they'll record the choreography from different angles, assemble it together. You study the angles, and then figure out how to duplicate it on set if it's working. And there's a lot of sort of redos and erasing the chalkboard and starting over. So it's a patient process, and when you do have that planning and have that detail, it's going to show on the day. And then you always, no matter how much you plan, there's always a little bit of jazz to be had on the day.
Yeah.
Because with the lighting and the camera and whoa, it looks amazing over here, so let's just take everything and go and adjust it. So you have to be a bit of a hunter. When you see it, you go for it.
And do you do a lot in terms of working with the locations? I mean, just an example, obviously on the bridge, there's a sequence where the car gets taken over with human attached to it,
yes.
flung into the water, or the telephone in the call center. It's obviously, that's a very story embedded use, and it provides a laugh when you're watching it, but it's actually completely intuitive and it makes perfect sense. Was that in the script, or is that something you kind of go through in the location hunting and the development sort of stages?
It could be a little bit of both. So you always want to take advantage of the environment, and just something like, oh, let's hit a guy with a phone. That'll be funny. Because they're evil telemarketers, Justice. The phone, now you need a rubber phone. You have to build the asset. You have to get the real phone. You do a mold. You do a rubber squeeze, they call it. And then now you have that asset on set. And all that takes time and money to prepare. So you can't make it up as much as I think people assume you do. And then just something like the stunt with the truck, that was all boarded out. So I had storyboards, put them on foam core, have rows of them on set. And then as we tick off the shots, and what can seem like a very simple shot can be hours of rigging, special preparation, special equipment, strange kit that we use just for an instant on camera. And it's creating the illusion of seamlessness, but with this very technical, very safe, very intense process.
What are some of those conversations that you have at the start of a movie? Because obviously it's a Hollywood movie in terms of budget, and there's obviously certain decisions that you've got to make in terms of, okay, this is really important to me, this is not so important, the cast costs this much. So how did you prioritize once you got the script, once you got some of the main sort of pieces in place, which sequences you really wanted to spend the money on, which ones you maybe thought weren't quite as important?
See, now you're triggering my PTSD. That's the hardest part of filmmaking, I think, and what people don't really understand is no matter how big the movie, you never have enough money to make it. And so as a filmmaker, it's all about priorities. And there'll be things where it's like, this is sacred. We can't invade this. This is crucial to the success of the film. And then there's other things where it's like, I can give that up, or I can find a smarter, cheaper, better way to do it. But I've found that the pressure of making things work and being able to do it on time and on budget forces you into creative solutions. And I'm all about just the trickery and the illusion of it. How you place a camera, how you place lights can make an incredible difference in what you're seeing on screen. And so just being smart about it. And as I say, you know what? I'm going to point the camera this way. Don't worry about all this. We don't need to spend a dime on this. Let's spend all the money on this.
So what were some of maybe the inputs from the studio once you'd sort of signed on and you got it cast? Was there any things that maybe you wanted to go in one direction? There were certain things where they were thinking, okay, let's go in this direction. How do you navigate that sort of territory?
I mean, at the end of the day, it is a business. And I think the important part, as long as you know what movie you're making, they know what movie you're making, and you're in agreement on it, no
one's in denial or incongruent.
And I think, filmmakers can get themselves in situations where I have this vision, but I'm not going to be honest about it. It's my little secret thing. But as long as you're fully open and transparent about what you're doing and you sort of check the business boxes, I had immense freedom on this. I had immense freedom on this. And that's where I'm at my best, is when I'm trusted as a filmmaker. Yeah,
definitely. And then you can sort of deliver the final vision that you've got in your mind. So let's talk about the other casting. Once you've got Jason on board, you've got the sort of the core of the package. Is there much thought in terms of, okay, well, we need to cast these certain names to make sure the package works overall, or how does that work for you?
I had a lot of leeway in that area, but for me, I love working with actors, and I love working with great actors. And Jason is the captain of the football team. And then you surround him with other amazing players, and it just elevates everybody's game. So, getting Jeremy Irons, Josh Hutcherson, Minnie Driver, Gemma Redgrave, all these incredible actors just add such reality to it, but they also help create these characters that help sell the world, and I think it's also kind of fun for the audience because these faces pop up and I know who that is.
Yeah. So what is your rehearsal process more away from the action, more into the drama scenes and those kind of interpersonal relationships?
Well, it depends upon the movie, but I like to rehearse a lot. I like to sit down. A rehearsal can be just simply a page turn and talking about character. Why is my character saying this? What does my character feel in this moment? Or, here's some biographical information. This is where you're coming from. And you always think of any character, everyone's the hero of their own movie, right? So a supporting character isn't there to be a supporting character. A supporting character is there because that's their life. Yeah. And they have this entire trajectory of life, and we're just seeing this moment. So when you can build out that sort of life force in a person and that sort of, CV of their history and where they're going, it's going to reflect in the overall reality of the ensemble.
Yeah, and I suppose on an action film as well, you've got very limited time because the action set pieces take up so much time.
Yes. Yeah.
So can we talk about the world building and the mood, because it does have its own very specific mood. Like the intro actually really impressed me. Just that in itself, you watch that and you think this is going to be a good movie. Someone's put some thought into making this original and not generic.
Absolutely. And again, that's what drew me to the script was this interesting mythology. And as you dive into the world of bees and beekeeping, you realize that this is a symbol and a metaphor that follows every civilization. Napoleon would wear golden bees on his uniform. The beekeeper as the first job of civilization. As Jeremy Irons says in the movie, no bees, no agriculture, no civilization. And this concept of this hidden hand that can go in and fix things when they're broken and then quietly exit. So that mysterious force is really fascinating. And I think it lends itself to more movies in this space.
Do you find those are quite important to find those? I suppose they're like extra metaphors that are completely relevant to the plot, but also not completely relevant to the character in a way. Like I feel like that's a good sort of indicator of the success of a movie is when that third party element is in there.
Absolutely. And this was a huge lesson for me in a lot of ways, having a mythology to kind of hang everything together beyond like, oh, it's a secret soldier from program X. But having this sort of this glue that binds everything, and then making a movie that is a little more fun, that is a little more tongue in cheek, that doesn't take itself so seriously, that isn't like solving the problems of the world per se, but giving the audience 2 hours of relief when they don't have to think about what's going on out there.
Yeah. So in terms of more the visual side and prepping with your cinematographer, production designer, that kind of thing, what is your process once you've got a script and it's green lit and you're going into production? Are you heavy on the mood boards? We've discussed shot lists a little bit.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's different styles. Every director has their own sort of personal recipe for how they make a film. I'm ridiculously hands-on and more of the traditional European school of filmmaking, which is where the designer, the DP, and the director really work together to make sure everything's fully integrated. So color palettes, huge thing for me. The color psychology. What is the mood? How does the photography, how does camera placement, how does lens choice affect the tone, the mood, the emotion of a scene? Photography is incredibly subjective, and every choice adds to that subjectivity. And so to collaborate, with really gifted people like that is one of my favorite parts of it. I'll do mood boards. I do a lot of photography. I'll go to sets and locations and then take pictures and then adjust and edit them so the crew can understand my thinking. I'll do storyboards. Kind of every technique possible is there. I'll build models. You take a model and then you get like an iPhone camera and you can show, hey, I'm going to want to shoot this. So the more detail you can get into on that part avoids chaos. And then, of course, you get to set and you do everything different anyway.
Yeah. So. What were some of the sort of camera grip decisions that were made maybe as generalizations? Obviously, that there's certain ways you can shoot action that are stipulated by where you're shooting and that kind of thing.
Well, it's the camera I used was the Area 35, and it's a new camera system. I think we're the first major feature to use that camera, and it has. And this is camera geek stuff, but it's 14 stops of dynamic range, which means it sees a lot of information.
Yeah.
And like film. And I grew up on film and I understand film and film looks. And with this camera, the color depth and the saturation and the gradation, you normally don't get
especially that. The darks as well, like worked really well in some of the early bits in the warehouses, and that was really nice to find.
You can play with shadow safely because there's going to be data, there's going to be information there. And normally when you shoot digital, it's like a compromise and you're setting kind of a gate that the information is going to get through and the rest gets lost. And in this case, it was a real pleasure to work with. And then I love anamorphic. I love the 2:3:5 aspect ratio, which is like the classic cinema frame.
Yeah.
And just the behavior of anamorphic lenses. And usually I use like really old lens sets, but in this case, I pretty much used Angino zooms. And these are brand new zooms. And there's just this responsiveness and this quality to them. So in aggregate, all these decisions add up to the look of the film, add up to the tone and the feel of it. And I could talk about that stuff all day.
Yeah. So let's just go a little bit back to your early leanings, because this is a studio movie. You started off doing some really good writing and directing, obviously Training Day.
Yes.
What are some of the differences in when you were starting out and you were trying to get that first, I guess maybe when you were trying to get that first break?
I started as a writer. The biggest lesson for me was whenever I chase the market, I'm going to write something someone's going to buy.
Yeah.
Never worked. Never happened. But the second I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to write something for me that comes from my heart and my truth. And that's where I think the power of a writer really comes into play is when it does come from personal truth. And then people respond to that truth.
Yeah, I think it's a common mishap from filmmakers is they try and make something that they think is going to be popular and it's going to please these people or that person. But the problem is, by the time sometimes a film can take 5 or 10 years to actually get into fruition anyway. By this point, some other 7 people maybe have made your movie.
Exactly.
The tastes have changed.
Yes.
It always has to be authentic to you.
That's it.
So what was it like sort of going through that first leap from a writer to a director back into slightly more into the indie space? Because it's interesting to see how you've progressed to Hollywood, because we've got a lot of filmmakers that are doing indie stuff and they're looking to make bigger budget stuff.
Yeah, I mean, my first directing situation was Harsh Times, and a lot of it was self-financed. I broke the first rule of Hollywood, which is never spend your own money. I borrowed against the house, and it was, I was naive enough to not know how dumb that was. And unfortunately, I didn't lose the house, but I did gain a vocation out of it. I learned I can direct, but I was so green. Nothing can prepare you for directing but directing. There's so much to learn, and it's taken years to build confidence as a director and really find my voice. It's the most terrifying moments where, you show up in the morning and the whole crew's looking at you for answers. And it's just people and equipment and a vague idea of what we're supposed to be doing, and you have to make a decision.
I think on one hand, I can remember doing that, just putting in money that shouldn't have been into a film. But I think at some point there is that moment when you're trying to break in where you have to put it all on the line and you have to sort of say, I'm going to commit everything to this. And maybe it's an internal thing just to commit yourself to that process.
You have to trust yourself at a certain point. I think the secret, especially if you're beginning, is you need some experienced people around you. You need people who can advise and counsel, because it is easy to get in over your head really fast, and it's so expensive, and it's such a big burn rate on the money, even at any scale, and the sort of responsibility and fear and everything else from $100 million movie feels just the same on set if it's a $3 million movie, because it's the same pressure, and being able to work with that pressure is the hallmark of a filmmaker. That's what it really is being able to work under pressure.
Was a big part of that pressure starting out, I suppose, going from writing and directing, working with big casts? Because now you work with big cast on so many things. I imagine that is maybe dulled down a little bit. But the first time,
well, it's always intimidating. It's always intimidating because movie stars are movie stars for a reason, and they know who they are, they know what their capabilities are. And as a director, you have to know them as a person, but also understand them professionally and sort of the magic of what they do. And there's always that moment where, you're kind of like dancing around each other and who's this person and how's this going to work? And then there's sort of a moment of surrender, which is like, okay, I trust you. You trust me. We're going to figure this out. Okay, we're a team now. And that's my favorite part of it, is like once you kind of get past the situation and the pressure, and it's just like a couple people creating something together.
I suppose that it's communication, isn't it? As long as you're discussing the thing that you're trying to make and you know what you're talking about to some degree, that's probably where you get past the nerves and the discommunication.
That's it 100%. It's the star needs to know that you know what you're doing. Even if you don't. What do they say? Fake it till you make it, you know, which is a real thing. Because you're engineering an artistic product, you're engineering a cultural product, and there's no guaranteed outcomes. So, me having a background as a writer really became my superpower as a director, because I understood character, story, drama in a way that, maybe not every director has. And I think there's a respect that actors have for writing. It's almost like this alchemical magic. It's like, you created that out of your head? Yeah, dude, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to either have a very good understanding of writing or emotional intelligence, or both. And if you don't have either of those and you're using the actors as placeholders, then you're kind of going to you're going to be an alien outside force on set, and there's never going to be that kind of close connection and collaboration.
Yeah, and there's no right answers, and there's absolutely filmmakers that are like, okay, I want you to do exactly this, say the line like this, and are very dogmatic about how they want the product achieved. And then there's a more looser process, which is kind of my process, which is just like get inside the heart of it, have that rapport, have that understanding, and then chase the result together.
Yeah. So what were some of the main lessons from, let's say, Harsh Times and Training Day that you learnt before you were sort of going into the more Hollywood fare?
With Training Day, it was seeing a script that I'd worked on for so long and it was so close to me, go through the process. It's like you have this child, this infant that you've nourished and you hand it over, and then someone else is going to raise the child, and they make their parenting decisions. And sometimes I would be like, I don't understand what's going on right now or necessarily like it. But then once I saw the result, I was like, okay, that makes sense. And so a lot of it is being open to collaboration. And it's tough because there's a lot of people in your ear. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of demands. And if you're not centered in your vision, it can go sideways really fast and then nothing works. And yet at the same time, I've made some really bad calls on set. It's just part of the process. And so to be able to trust someone to come up and say, hey, there's a better way of doing this, or have you thought about this?
It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
And also, you can't be infallible on the set. I think it's one of those things.
It's giving yourself permission to be wrong, and that much responsibility. People can go to a place of ego of I must project this perfect persona of the person in charge. And if you can get past that and just be a human being and listen to people and not be dogmatic and not assume that everything is right, that's the way.
And I suppose sometimes you do have the answer in post as well. And no one on set could have figured it out in that situation anyway. So you just have to carry on the ship in the right direction. And
1,000%. I mean, movies are made in post. Movies are made in editing. You can make vastly different versions of a film in edit. And then a lot of times, I always say you don't know how to make the movie until you've made the movie.
Yeah.
Which is like the most frustrating part. And it doesn't always work the way you think it's going to. In fact, it usually doesn't.
Yeah.
And so having an amazing editor, having voices you trust, and then being open to solutions, and sometimes you go on and you reshoot stuff and it's like, I missed this moment, or the audience didn't get the information I needed to get to them. There's always a little bit of cleanup, but it's such a plastic medium that it can be forgiving and unforgiving at the same time.
So are there any sort of genres or areas that you're really interested in discovering that you haven't maybe gone into? Because you've done some really, really interesting sort of prestige indie stuff. You've done some great blockbusters. Where are you where are you feeling now on that scale?
So I really liked making Beekeeper. I really liked that idea of like fun escapist cinema. And I kind of want to explore that lane a little bit more and kind of chase the instant action classic thing. And this is crazy, but I really want to make a musical.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I have so much respect for performers and performance and music and song and musicality and that form of expression. It's something I'd love to explore. Like one of my favorite movies is Black Swan. It goes inside like the creative process. It's one of the best movies about what it feels like to be an artist and how we self-critique and so much judgment and how we can be our own worst enemies, and yet somehow how greatness can come from that. So, I think there's something in there I'm chasing.
That's awesome. Just one very, very quick bit of advice that you would give to maybe yourself or someone else trying to break in.
Wow. I mean, it's such a different business now than when I started. The competition is so high. The bar is so high that to break in, your work has to be absolutely exceptional.
Right.
Beyond exceptional. It has to be 0.0001% beyond. And to that, I would say, if you can create from truth, if you can create from honesty, and it isn't so much about, oh, I have to do this entirely different thing that no one's seen before, just telling a story we've heard before, but from a place of like absolute authenticity and honesty. And I feel like that's something that is missing a little bit in cinema right now is authenticity and truth and human truth. And so you can never go wrong by understanding kind of the human soul and just how do you express that? And then my further advice would be, if you want to direct, get your hand on a camera, do it. Don't ask permission. Make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. Don't stop, grind, get on a set, learn the processes, be in the environment. Meet actors. You know, if you can't get a camera, get 2 actors together, write a scene, and just grind and experiment and learn. There's no other way to do it.
Fantastic. Thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure. And the movie is amazing. I really enjoyed it. I laughed and was exhilarated in equal measure. So yeah, thanks for joining.
Really appreciate that. Thank you. Great questions.
Thanks.